read something?
Okay.
Otherwise I'll do what he did.
All right, here we are, ready to go.
Good.
I'm Helen Borth, and I'd like to give you a little bit of the history of the Institute of Self-Awareness that's been very active for many years, but we go back into the late 70s, early 80s. And believe it or not, consciousness work, psychic work, energy work was all a lot different in those days. So you can tell I'm old. Because
What's age?
things have changed a lot. But early in the 80s, I put a booklet together. And it seemed at that time it was easier to pull some words together that really talked about what it is that the Institute, which was not exactly called the Institute at that time, but we did become nonprofit in '91, that we were not Institute by that time. But I would like to have these people that are active with me at ISA to just pick out a few things that they would like to read to you on a booklet that I put together a long time ago, it seems. So I'll start with Lynn here, and if she would just read a couple items. Do you have something too that you're hanging? Okay, you're going to help with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, what I like about this paper that she wrote was that the Institute is not specifically connected with any philosophy or practice. In other words, we don't do yoga, we're not into philosophy as far as the Zen or Buddhism. However, they all touch on ways we can teach ourselves how to think and act more in harmony with wholeness, unity, and oneness. I don't know if you have any, I
You
can
can just go ahead.
I can go ahead. The lessons are designed to exercise and enhance the reader's intuition, spiritualness, and the ability to cognite mind-changing and stretching concepts.
Now, what we mean by stretching, let's get that across first of all. Well, I'll even back up a little bit. I want, when people come into class, take workshops, do private work with us, that they understand this is not therapy. What this is ways to learn how to understand a way to think and be that is more encompassing and bigger than what we had pictured before. Say, for example, someone will come into class and say, oh, I had so much trouble with my 6-year-old this week, and then explain the circumstance and then want to know, what should I do? Well, in this one case, just within the month here, as they're talking, it came to me that what the best thing to do was not to learn something new for this particular mother, but to stop mothering to the excess. And believe it or not, she pulled back and had a circumstance where the child was told, you know how to figure this out. You can find your own answer. And believe it or not, he did. And she noticed a difference in him in 1 week, that she let go of solving a 6-year-old problem and let him study and think and be aware of a new way to approach whatever that problem was. So that's what we're working with. New ways, different ways, not the same conditioned ways to be on the planet week after week.
And on
Go ahead.
that note, for her son, because she pulled back and allowed him, she herself was explaining how more relaxed she was and freer, because of that. She wasn't getting herself stressed out and all upset every day when he'd come home. So I think that is, really comes back down to self and how it helped her.
And bit by bit, from you sitting in the classes too, know that so much of what we're thinking is outdated. It's yesterday's news. I always look at it, that we live that way with conditioning for years and years. And for example, with the Journal Sentinel being placed in all the grocery stores and the drug stores, and you buy the paper for the day, and then they have some left over. Now what do they do with it?
Throw them out.
Because
They're not any good.
it's
old news.
yesterday's news. And so that's what it turns out to be, that people connecting with us and doing our line of work, which happens to be the most prevalent universal flow of energy and of new ways that's current, is to change your way of thinking. And so they would assume then, or try to get the connection, that something that they have done all the time, for example, the woman with the 6-year-old, she always went in there and helped to fix things. So that was her conditioning, that was her way of doing life. Never dawned on her that there's another way to do it and step out from underneath that. And that what she had been doing was yesterday's news. It's a dead issue. We can find another way that has more life energy in it. Did you have something there, Larry?
Well, I mean, it's just one from the original book that you wrote. One of the first statements you have in there is humanity's way of thinking is outdated, incomplete, and definitely lacks a global view. What we need is a new mind style, one including and defined by the latest discoveries.
What does that mean there, the global view?
That it's just not, well, you even take the global view out and put a universal view in, because it's not just not here in Milwaukee or Florida or, it's the whole country, and it's not only happening here. All these people that we see that have YouTube pages, are across the world, and this new mind style, this new way to see life is across the whole globe, not just here or there, it's everywhere.
And that, all this global stuff is like so new to me when I think that our family got a TV when I was in high school. There was no such thing as computers or YouTubes or,
Cell phones.
Oh, a cell phone, please. Please. Okay. Fonda, you had something here that we should look at.
To learn to be our own teacher, our own inner teacher.
Now, what does that mean? People generally only know I go to this class because there's a teacher and the teacher's going to tell me what to do.
I found from doing this work that the answers are already inside of us. And to intuitively
Yeah, just like that, you gotta wait to pull it in because intuition comes in.
that instead of thinking that everything is on the outside, the answers are within us and the peace is within us. And if we learn to step back and look at things a different way and be patient, it will come. It will come in, the answers will come in.
Okay, but what you've got here that you wanted to share, And I think we have to address it a little more, because it starts with separate
Separation.
thinking. What is separation thinking? How are they going to know what that means? Anybody?
Stress, conflict.
No,
Well,
no,
no.
that's
No,
no,
that's-
no, no, no.
You hook point A to point B. You know,
Oh,
if you remember the whole thing of you're going to run with scissors, you're going to poke somebody's eye out. Connecting those two things. There's two separate ideas.
Or this out
Or-
there is
Or
doing it.
if I have more money, I'll be
More happy.
peaceful or more happy. If I have a better job, if I have a better relationship. Always thinking that something outside of you, separate from you, is going to make the improvement. And it's always not the case. It always takes you to more pain and anguish.
And look at the fun in class when people discover that they can do life without so much separated thinking. In fact, you know, we could just read this. Why don't we do it like we did before and just each
Okay.
do a line and go through? Let Fonda start then.
Okay. Separation thinking is the source of stress.
Separation thinking is the source of conflict.
Separation thinking is the source of fear.
Separation thinking is the source of dis-ease.
Oneness thinking is a source of happiness.
Oneness thinking is the source of fulfillment.
Oneness thinking is the source of harmony.
Oneness thinking is the source of well-being.
And since we talked a little bit about separation thinking, but now what is oneness thinking?
It's-
Okay, we'll do an example. Oneness thinking is something like, now I have this all set up here. Now, you can probably not see this very well, if at all. But this is a picture of an elephant and a person up here on a ladder. Now here's how we get a little sample of separation and oneness. What I have drawn here with this elephant is that there are 3 blindfolded men who are holding a part of an elephant, and their job was to explain what an elephant looks like to them by feeling a part. Okay, so there I'll give you this blindfolded person is feeling the tail of an elephant. So now describe that, with the
It's
blindfold
long,
on.
thin, has long hairs on it.
How thin?
Something I could wrap my hand around.
Oh, a rope, maybe.
Yes, a rope.
Okay. All right, Lynn, you get the blindfolded person that has their hands on an elephant's leg. What is it to you?
round, wrinkly,
I need size.
big.
I need more on size.
It's big and bumpy and
Big as, what would you compare it to?
big
Could
as
be
a basketball.
a tree,
and it's got-
maybe?
A tree trunk. That could be
Okay, but now he just said the elephant is the size of a rope.
he's round.
Well, let's fight.
Okay. Mine is big and round like a trunk. How can it be? How can yours be like that?
I was going to say, you must be drinking, but that's inappropriate.
Okay, Fonda, your blindfolded person has the trunk. Now what is, yeah, that's it.
Closing my eyes, so I'm blind and I'm holding the trunk. There's an end and it's wet. It's wet at the end and there's kind of a hole there and then it's really long, the wrinkly, and it's about that big. And that's what I get a
And
sense
it
of.
moves, it
And it
wiggles.
moves,
Did
and it
yours
moves.
move and wiggle?
A little.
Hardly.
Yeah.
yours moved in a little.
Yeah, it just swings back
Okay.
and forth.
All right, now what are you going to say to her that she says this is how an elephant is? It's got a hole at the end. Did you have a hole at the
No.
end? Did you have a hole?
No,
at the
mine's like a
end? Well,
trunk.
then what are we going to
Mine
do
is
with
like
these
a trunk.
definitions here? Hmm?
I still think I'm right.
I'm right.
Okay, that's how consciousness
Life.
works. You know, we are all so sure we're right. And to be right on this planet, opposite wrong is one of our biggest conditionings, one of our biggest ways that we can go in there and relearn something. Now, what we did here then was take another person that has no blindfold on, goes up a ladder, and looks at an elephant in the distance, slight distance. Now what? What does that person say an elephant looks like compared to what you all said?
You have more about the blindfold.
Would include all of our statements.
With the ears
more.
and the eyes and
It would include
With
so
everything.
much, and so much of the part of the elephant that you each described that it would almost make it inaccurate. You cannot say an elephant has this twisted thing with a hole at the end and it's wet. And it's wet. And have this person up here on a ladder and say, oh my gosh, that's about this much of the real picture.
Right.
So in essence, that's what the work of the Institute is. We call it ISA. Is to help us realize that a whole lot more than we've ever imagined of our consciousness is stuck on a certain way to see something. And what we learn is how to ease up on that and not give it so much power our way that we have a bigger picture. So that's the bottom line, is always to get a bigger picture. Stretch your knowledge. Stretch your attachments. And what's the other words I'm thinking of? All those,
Limitations.
all of that. And sit back a little bit and say, maybe I have a small picture. And once you kind of admit and are honest about that your pictures are a little bit small, you have room to grow, to expand, to stretch that consciousness.
Because just about everything we see or experience, if it's a relationship, a job, we may only see 10%, if that, of the whole picture. Because there's so much more, and we haven't even touched about the energy of these situations. So we can't allow what we think and feel at that moment to rule us and keep us stressed and in conflict and full of fear. Because we have to know that it's only a small part of what's actually going on.
Well, that's where all those words come from again. Read those words once more right here, from the separation.
stress, conflict, fear, and dis-ease.
You know, now how many people would think that dis-ease comes from when you have a tight perspective on life? You have no idea. It's a great study to be able to free up your aura and not live from such a tight consciousness, which always comes back to being right. And especially if you know anything about the auras, know anything about the energy part of the aura, that you can learn to change the degree of tightness
And frequencies.
and frequencies about the aura. For us, that the energy approach, I have not run across that in the early years of all this work, in the 80s. Nobody, you knew about the aura, but not how that you could do something about that. If you had these fears, pulling everything tight, that you could actually do something.